Shonen anime is one of the most popular types of anime out there, and unfortunately my least favorite. I'm going to assume that you know what a shonen anime is, but if you're for some reason not a virgin, then shonen anime are the types of shows where a lighthearted protagonist with RGB hair beats up a green monster and some villains with the power of friendship. The protagonist gets stronger with more friends, and unlocks different modes or levels as the series progresses to save the world. The animes try to portray some message of hard work overcomes everything, but the protagonist is usually given their power or born with it. That's kind of like saying you've earned your business empire when you've inherited it from your pops. And there's nothing wrong with these shows. I'll admit that there is something appealing about kicking back to a simplistic anime that doesn't make some sort of moral message, but I can't stand the majority of them. So today I'd like to explain why shonen anime is such utter trash. One of the main reasons for my hatred of shonen is the same reason why so many people enjoy it. And it's the simplicity of the stories. It's always a battle of good versus evil, and it's just so boring to watch. The plot is always some variation of a young boy/girl with hidden power that takes down the big bad incel that is the antagonist. Throw in some speeches about how humanity is good and how hard work prevails over everything, despite the protagonist having a power that makes him stronger than everyone else in the show, and that makes all the hard work of the people around them worthless. And you have a shonen anime. It usually takes 9 seasons, with the first seasons just being like, look at how weak the protagonist is despite how strong you thought they were. Throw in some fan service and that's pretty much it. Most of them are way too predictable with their plots and characters, and it just frustrates me how similar they are to one another. Naruto is basically every other shonen, except for ninjas. You could say that for pretty much any other shonen as well. The protagonist is usually a loudmouth, passionate kid. The rival is usually some edgy prodigy. The female protagonist discovers her feelings in the not like I like you or anything type of way. And the teacher is some rude veteran of the world that constantly has to establish that they're a tough guy. There are some shonen anime which handle this predictability to their advantage, like Black Clover, which, despite how much I hate that show, I have to hand it to them for not pretending to be anything other than a shonen. They know they're shonen and they go for it. And then you have shows like Attack on Titan, which do the classic bait and switch, setting up a shonen-like world for the viewer to enjoy, only to violently tear it down in front of their eyes. But the rest of the shonen animes have nothing to make them stand out, and the lack of creativity honestly bothers me. Okay, so I could just tear into individual shonens in order to find out why I hate them so passionately, but I feel like it'd be better to explain it by talking about the shows I like that are shonen. And the two that I can think of at the moment, well, it's not in the moment, I wrote the script, so I'm not kidding you. But the two that I thought of when writing the script are Death Note and My Hero Academia. And I'm going to go into why these two are better than the average shonen and what that means for the rest of the genre. Death Note stands out for multiple reasons. First off, we're actually following the villain of the story, which is a nice twist to the shonen genre. Second, the stakes feel present for every character, including the protagonist. And third, the audience is challenged morally with the topic of the show. Light Yagami is the villain of the anime, and if you disagree with me, it's because you have to ask to go to the restroom during class. I see no way in which a high school prodigy that has never had to struggle with anything to get anywhere in his life is fit to decide who lives and dies. But that rant aside, I think we can agree that the show paints Light as a villain. or at the very least decides not to paint him as a hero. Light blatantly kills those that disagree with him, and gives some speeches about humanity being flawed that any shonen genre villain would be proud of. And this treatment of a villain protagonist allows for Death Note to bring something unique to the genre. The second thing that Death Note brings to the table is that the stakes feel real for every character. Throughout the entire show, including that one part no one likes to think about, you're getting triggered just by me mentioning it. I felt tense throughout the entirety of the show. The characters could have dropped dead at any moment with the way that it was written. I never felt like this watching any other shonen because plot armor protects everyone. But throughout all of Death Note, I was wondering who was going to die and when one of the characters would meet their end. The third part, which I'd like to discuss about Death Note, is that it brings a moral dilemma. I struggled at times watching the show wondering who was actually doing the right thing. Sure, Light Yagami is a kid with a god complex, but he still does some good things, killing rapists and murderers. Is he really the bad guy? And sure, L is a bit of a creep in how he does things. He is a bit too full of himself, but he's doing the right thing, trying to catch the Kira and bring him to justice to make everyone feel safe. No other shonen even attempts this level of moral philosophy. Every other shonen compared to Death Note has a philosophical complexity of a fucking puddle compared to Death Note, and just how it works. No other shonen can even touch Death Note and how it handles its material in such a heavy way. I could talk about Naruto being so lighthearted with how genocide is bad, but you get the point. This makes it so that the shonen is not just a typical lighthearted anime, which most of us watch shonen for. It brings some sort of weight to the conversation that's being had with the show. And those are just some of the reasons why I think Death Note is great compared to other shonen. Next up we have My Hero Academia, and why it's an exception to the shonen genre. Despite being very shonen, I think if you watch the show you could tell it's being shonen. But that's because of its character development. That's why it's better than the rest of them. It suffers from things such as protagonist luck syndrome, with Deku being given the greatest power, and sometimes being morally shallow like Naruto, but it makes up for it with its character development. There is not a single character in My Hero Academia that I would call poorly written, except for fucking Mineta. But in this video, we get to pretend that that guy doesn't exist. So no, there are no morally bad characters. There are no poorly written characters, because Mineta doesn't exist for now. Every character in the show gets their time to steal the spotlight from Deku and become the protagonist for their 15 minutes, which is a lot more than I could say for any other shonen. Other shonens throw in these half-assed characters that were introduced with some tragic backstory that automatically become good guys because the protagonist talked to them and heard their emotions. And despite being thrown in on like one of the last episodes of the last season, the author still expects you to care about them. Most of the time I just don't even acknowledge that these types of characters even exist. But compare that to My Hero Academia, which fleshes out every character. Remember that one magnet guy who was working with the League of Villains? Yeah, you know who I'm talking about? Well, it turns out they were a transgender woman that became a villain due to being mistreated by society. Which is super good. That's just good writing. It was a detail that never needed to be added. The League of Villains was already good on its own. You could have left them as villains, but adding this sense of tragedy to the characters, making them more realistic to being villains, just makes everything better. I don't know what else to say about it other than the fact that it didn't need to be added, but the addition of this knowledge just makes everything around it better. And the League of Villains themselves each have like characters that are tragic rather than being edgy and strong must survive. They feel like actual people that could become villains in this type of society, ones that were forced into this position rather than choosing it. And that's something that no other shonen ever makes. Every other villain in shonen animes usually have the same mentality of the strong must survive, the weak must perish. And I haven't even gotten into how Endeavor went from abusive father to one of the favorite characters because of his character development, which is amazing, by the way. And Bakugo, I could make a whole video on Bakugo on himself. Everyone expected him to become a villain the moment he got a chance. But the moment he got a chance to become a villain, he's like, nope, I am All Might number 2, and I am going to kick some villain ass. Which is pretty nice to see. Overall, the character development of this show makes it better than any other shonen. And the only thing that it's missing is getting an episode where we could see Mineta beaten to a pulp. Please, just one episode. Overall, the reasons that I like Death Note and My Hero are the same reasons I dislike most other shonen. Most other shonen lack these types of characters, these types of moral dilemmas, any sense of tension, and the list could go on and on. At the end of the day, many people enjoy shonen animes for this type of simplicity, but I just find these types of shows that don't attempt to make anything interesting boring. These shows don't ever attempt to carry any sort of message or bring any sort of conversation to a table, and that just makes it boring for me. I understand that a lot of people like that simplicity and how life goes. Life's tough at times, and sometimes you just want to watch a cute anime girl do dances, but hey, that's just some of the reasons I dislike shonen, to be honest. And now that that's over with, I gotta take a shower, because talking about anime for this long has caused me to grow a beard, create another Reddit account just for backing up arguments, and forget to put on deodorant. I also gained like 50 pounds just talking about shonen for a whole 6 minutes, which honestly, that's kind of what you come to expect when you make a video on anime. So now that that's done with, I'm going to try to fit the words "my problem with shonen anime" desperately into this video. Hey, thanks for watching if you stuck through with it. My channel link is right below the video, where it always is. You know where it is. And if you'd like to see some of the more other videos I made, same personalities, same shitty hosts, except for worse quality. Kind of worse. I mean, this video is kinda trash too, but you know where to find them. So, that's all for now, and I'll see you next time.